New York City's Republican mayor some 14 years ago implemented some school choice reforms, allowing students from anywhere in the city, even the Bronx, to go to high school, for example, in Manhattan, so that parents had an opportunity to send their kids to a better school. As a matter of fact, some of those reforms kind of worked or seemed to. Correlation is not causation, but graduation rates actually increased citywide by about 20%. However, they have not succeeded in overcoming what one author called the savage inequalities of the education system in New York City. I'm Scott Ott with Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, and this is your right angle on the situation with school choice in New York City. Folks, there has been going on for years, surprisingly, in one of America's densest urban areas, an experiment that gives kids the opportunity to go to a different school than the one that is in their geographic proximity. However, a recent study has shown that, 80,000 kids are applying to go to these high schools, and there are only 439 of these high schools that they can choose to go to. So there's a lottery, there's an algorithm that was developed by a Nobel Prize-winning economist, and all this kind of stuff. But the upshot of it all is that most of the kids, mostly Latino and Black kids, mostly first or second generation immigrants from poor neighborhoods, are not able to escape those poor neighborhoods and go to the better schools for a variety of reasons. It's not because the kids aren't intellectually capable of doing so, but rather because there aren't that many academically great schools. So, this is a fascinating challenge, gentlemen. I mean, Bill Whittle, if government is going to take responsibility for, and frankly, just sort of take that whole area of our lives out of our hands for most people, doesn't government have the moral obligation to make sure that a kid who's born in the Bronx from, first-generation immigrant parents has the same quality of education, the same quality of teachers, and the same quality of facilities as the kid who goes to school, also a public school, in Manhattan?
Every time I hear the terms government and moral obligation in the same sentence, I get very nervous.
Hey, a little flop sweat.
Yeah, we talked about this. I think I just want to make this clear from last time, too, when we talked about the school lunch issue. I think that all education ought to be done on the county level or at the state level at the absolute highest. Let's just get that said. With that said, I think public education is taxpayer-funded public education. I almost said free, but I'm trying to get out of that habit.
That's right.
Is in fact a great good for the country. I think it's a great moral good. I think it has in fact made the American experiment what it is today. People from around the world, aristocrats, would come to America to just marvel at an entire population that could read and write and that was educated at public expense. It was simply unheard of. So that entire idea is an idea worth preserving. I think in the past, when we had a problem with schools, we had enough moral fiber in this country to understand that it would be a moral competition, right? The idea that you had the worst school in the county or in the city or whatever just simply would be intolerable, and you'd work harder, and everybody would work harder, and competition would take that level up. But now we're at a point where there's so little pride in just about anything that matters that we're reduced now to making it an economic competition because it seems to be the only thing left that still gets any traction. Progressives can't understand this idea of competition. Whenever they hear competition, they just see the guy from the Monopoly cards sitting on a big fat load of money, rubbing his hands together, thinking about all the profit he's going to make from stealing kids' school lunch money. But it is the lack of competition that's produced this. And it's just that simple. I'll just close by saying this, Scotty. Right now, it's all about incentives, right? We get what we pay for, right? It's always been the case. You get what you pay for. What are we paying for in public education now? We're paying for a graduation rate. We're not paying for a test score rate. We're paying for a graduation rate. What percentage of the students graduate? To me, that's like producing a product, and the only thing we're counting on in this factory is how many boxes come out of the back of the factory on the conveyor belt. We don't care if the stuff in the boxes is good. We don't care if the stuff in the boxes is broken. Matter of fact, we don't care if there's anything in the boxes at all. All we care about is that a certain number of boxes come off every single day, and if we do that, then that's success. So the main thing we have to do is reestablish our targets. What is it that we want? Because you get what you pay for.
Now, Stephen Green, in some of these schools in Manhattan, these excellent high schools in Manhattan, the graduation rate approaches 97%. At some of the worst schools in New York City, high schools, the graduation rate is down around the mid 50s, let's say 56%. Most of them are somewhere in between. However, Stephen, I mean, I don't think you're a person who believes in that we should guarantee equality of outcome, only equality of opportunity.
Yeah.
And so, if you happen to be living in the Bronx and 56% of the kids are able to graduate from that high school, then if it is to be, it's up to ye, right?
Well, it still leaves the question, what are they graduating with? It's one thing to have the piece of paper with your name on it that says diploma, but what is behind that? What knowledge did you get? What skill set did you learn? These are important questions. And look, I believe in public education. I send my boys to a public school. In fact, my wife and I moved to this neighborhood for this particular school, that even though the house we fell in love with isn't even in the bus range of their elementary school. So we believe in this school so much that we get up extra early in the morning so that we can take our kids to school, and we cut off our own personal time early in the afternoon so we can bring them home from school. We have to do this ourselves.
That's called white privilege, ladies and gentlemen. You heard it right there. That's exactly the savage inequalities I'm talking about, Stephen.
But this is the advantage you have of a two-parent family in a good neighborhood. Is that fair? No, it's not fair, and we need to think about ways to bring that kind of fairness to schools that need it. It reminds me of a report I saw this morning on Instapundit that the country doesn't have a murder problem. There are a few neighborhoods and a few demographics that have a murder problem, and it's getting worse. So you've got schools with questionable teachers run by unions that are not even questionable, failing these kids, and you have parents who are by and large single family homes where you don't have the structure that kids need to succeed, going to schools that don't have the structure or the teachers that kids need to succeed. And I hate to say you've got to throw money at this problem, but maybe we do need to throw some money at this problem and open more charter schools, and maybe even go so far as to train the teachers for more charter schools and choke off the money for these union-run public schools that are just failures up and down in these particular neighborhoods.
Can I add one thing to that?
Yes, please.
Because I was going to say this before Steve talked about driving his kids this long distance, but it just reinforces the point. The first thing you have to do is you have to have a culture, a subculture. I'm not talking about the American culture. I'm talking about the difference in neighborhoods with a 97% graduation rate and a 50% graduation rate. A lot of it's poverty, a lot of the school, all of it. But ultimately, what's going to make a kid succeed in school is going to be his attitude towards school, and that's determined by his parents. It may not be possible for everybody to get in a BMW and drive 50 miles to get people to school, but the fact that Steve and his wife have made it a priority in their life, they've made it the priority in their life. That attitude is what produces good students. And that attitude rubs off on the children and on the students as well. And I don't think it's. I'd rather have parents like you in a bad school than parents who don't give a damn in a good school. I have no question whatsoever that my children would come out better if we took it on our shoulders in the home instead of depending on the school to motivate us for these things.
And you know what, Bill? It goes even just, I think maybe a little further than that, because there are plenty of single moms in bad neighborhoods who do the parental thing and run roughshod over their kids to make sure they get through high school and learn. And I think there are more parents who want to be able to do that, but they don't have the skill set because they came out of the same lousy schools.
Is that line from, is it Stevie Wonder? Is it... Their clothes are old, but never are they dirty.
That's from Living in the City.
Yeah, that's the attitude.
Yeah,
right. And that attitude is the attitude that makes a difference between success and failure.
Those kids are going to come out winners.
And I know you guys know this, but these kids in the Bronx, for example, at this the New York Times story looked at a middle school called Pelham Gardens Middle School, and about 160 kids there are getting ready to make the move up to high school and trying to, they literally give them like this phone book about the high school, the 439 high schools and 775 different programs at those high schools that they can get involved in, and somehow they've got to pick 12 of them and hope the algorithm gives them one that they want. But these kids, if they're to go to a school outside of the Bronx, walk a half mile to the number 5 train, get on that thing, and spend about an hour traveling on a train to get to school. and then to get back. And in the situation where you've got a single mom situation where when is she going to make it to the parent-teacher conferences? How engaged can she be? So, what really upsets me, and let me say one good thing again. What Stephen pointed out is if you can get in a decent charter school, well, under the Bloomberg administration, that last Republican administration that they had in New York, the number of charter schools began to rapidly increase. Now, they started with a very low number, but there are more and more charter schools, and there are more and more of these small public schools. That was another one of those reforms. Let's make a small public high school instead of these giant, what I call prison farms, where these kids cannot establish a pecking order. And so they become
diploma mills.
Yeah, well, and I wish they were diploma mills, dropout mills. But those two things are good. However, there are only so many of those. And my understanding of the New York City program does not allow you the choice of going then to a private school, for example, where your tuition would be covered, sort of by a voucher program. So you've got to choose between all these publicly funded options, and there just aren't enough of them. And what really upsets me is the thought that some 14-year-old kid who already knows she wants to be an obstetrician, who already knows she wants to be an attorney, who's been busting her butt and getting straight A's in 7th and 8th grade, will be stuck in one of those dropout factories in the Bronx where for some reason the federally controlled, state-funded, city-run local school cannot possibly provide an education as good for that person as they can for the kid who lives 7 miles away across a river. And I think that is unacceptable when you get to a publicly funded entity. You're either going to offer the same quality product to every kid or you're not going to be in that business at all. For Bill Whittle and Stephen Green, I'm Scott Ott. Thanks for watching Right Angle.